Hello and welcome to another stream of Frenchman Learns About Japan, and the sub-series, I guess, of Frenchman Learns About the History of Weekly Shonen Jump that we've been doing for like 4 or 5 streams already, I think. And yeah, this time we're getting into the 90s at last. As always, we're watching the videos by the great channel Trentin Art. You'll find a link to the playlist with all the videos in the description, and do check out the channel. Obviously, like, they're the one doing the work of reading all those mangas, compiling info, and making those great informative videos that we have been enjoying, so do check them out, absolutely. But yeah, today we'll do 1991, you know, getting into the 90s as the videos are getting longer, there's more to talk about. Yu Yu Hakusho seems like that's starting today, so yeah, should be some interesting stuff. But as always, it's more about me learning, you know, about stuff I don't know, like Yu Yu Hakusho I already know about, so it's less interesting to me. I'm more looking forward to all the lesser known stuff you might talk about, and potentially hearing about stuff that I want to read. Yeah. But yeah, as well as the link to the playlist with all the videos from Trentin Art, the link to my Discord, my Stream Element and Patreon if you want to follow me, support me, all the links in the description. And yeah, that's the gist of it. We'll probably continue next week. We still have quite a few videos as the series goes up to 99. OSC is like changed the naming scheme of the videos, yeah. But yeah, 99. So we still have a couple of streams left. Yeah. It's the kind of series where I don't really want to catch up, because I wish this was catched up to like the 2020s or something. And I still will do it eventually, but it must still take a couple of years. But hey, at least we discovered a great channel from that. Anyway, I don't know if there's too much more to say. The 80s were definitely peak Shonen Jump. I mean, obviously Shonen Jump started in the late 60s, and you know, the early days were interesting. 70s were strong, you know, a lot of classic, but obviously I think in terms of popular culture, what people know, what people have watched, and what I know and watched, or read, I guess, the 80s was definitely the strong, like the absolute strongest decade. I mean, every year had like a big classic starting, I guess. It was really something, yeah. So let's learn about the 90s, starting with 1990.
Welcome to a brand...
Here we go, English to Nihongo. Nihongo doko. Right, yeah.
New decade of Shonen Jump's history, the 1990s, which will see us through to the end of Jump's golden age, as well as its path to the new millennium, which will be filled with countless iconic and popular manga. We have to start at the very beginning though, which will see us add some of those absolutely iconic series to the magazine's roster this year. So strap on in, as we're about to dive straight into Shonen Jump in the year 1990.
Yu Yu Hakusho, which you probably won't find it anymore. I always forget, I've had so many channels, so I forget which one has been deleted or not. But some years ago, I think it was in 2020, when I was doing some anime reaction, I did react to the full show of Yu Yu Hakusho, the 100 plus episode. I really liked it, for the most part. Maybe a controversial take, but I really liked it up to the Dark Tournament arc. I thought the show was only going up in quality, but after the Dark Tournament, I felt like it just went down in quality and just interesting ideas to me. I know some people still like stuff after the Dark Tournament, but for me, the show is really just this, then this. But yeah, just a bit of a trivia that I reacted to the full show back then. But I think those are probably from a channel that was deleted, so yeah, it's not saved anywhere, unfortunately.
Of the year, we have Ace by Yoichi Takahashi, drifting to baseball after tennis didn't work out for him. This would last for 73 chapters and 9 volumes, having a decent run, and being about Kazuhaichi Aiba, a elementary school boy with a gift for baseball like the rest of his family, though he's also burdened with a curse. Following his father's death from being struck by lightning while in a game of baseball, his grandpa wants him never to touch the sport again and transfers him to Wakamiya Elementary School. Here he's tempted by the team, who will disband if they don't start winning games, and thus he eventually joins, helping the team rise in the ranks and attend tournaments. Other than the way Kazu's father dies, nothing really popped out to me with this one, and it seems to be a fairly standard baseball sports manga. Takahashi's art has leveled up, mainly in his compositions. Pages look great, although his characters still look quite samey to me. Another point I want to mention is how passionate Takahashi is about sport. He's known for his love of football, but he gave a few other sports a go, and while Ace wasn't nearly as big as Tsubasa, it did have a good run, and Jump seemed to favor it heavily, giving it many covers throughout 1990.
Okay.
I do find it interesting though that Takahashi had made waves in introducing football to a wider audience, and yet he decided to return to baseball, a tried and true sport, but one with dwindling popularity. If a big name like Takahashi made a baseball manga back in the sport's heyday of the 60s and 70s, it would be a surefire hit, which I think goes to show that baseball had taken a step back as the defining sport that represents manga, at least in Jump. 1990 would see Tetsuo Hara, the artist behind Fist of the North Star, return with Mio Aso to adapt Keiichiro Ryu's famous historical novel Ichimuan Furuyuki into Hana no Keiji, or Keiji of the Flowers. This ran for 18 volumes and 167 chapters and follows Keiji Maeda, a kabukimono, a wild man and warrior who dresses weirdly and is akin to a type of delinquent equivalent for this time period. The manga is a historical war and drama adventure set in the Sengoku period.
Oh shit, and this actually looks good. Damn, how did I not find this? Like, literally, recently in these streams about the history of Japan, we spent like 6 or 7 streams on the Sengoku period, and after that I was really on a kick to find some good manga about the Sengoku period. Oh, hello, welcome. Always nice to see some new people that I don't know. Welcome. And so yeah, I was like searching for some interesting like Sengoku Jidai manga, and I couldn't find quite anything. Maybe it's because a lot of them were not translated, but this looks like the type of shit I would have wanted to read. And yet I couldn't find this one.
And featuring numerous real-world historical figures and events, although fictionalized and aggrandized. While some comparisons could be made to Fist of the North Star, with its over-the-top violence, large muscular men, and general art style.
Like, I basically wanted like, Kingdom, but Sengoku Jidai, and this looks like it. Ana no Keiji. I'll open this. Ana no Keiji. I'm interested. I mean, maybe it's not good though. It looks good because, of course, with this artist, but I mean, it ran for like a lot of volume, right? Ana no Keiji, Kumo no Kanatani. Yeah, okay. Wait, I actually have it on my plan to read. That must have been like 10 years ago I had it or something, when I first joined the site. Alright. The reviews are good too, yeah. How many chapters are translated? Maybe not a lot. Okay, well. What, there's a pachinko of this? Really? I guess there's pachinko of everything. Okay. Are you good at pachinko?
It's a lot different tonally, with it being more jovial thanks to its main character. Keiji is a bundle of joy. He's inquisitive, silly, and does whatever he wants, illuminating an otherwise really awful setting with his antics. Regularly through the manga, you will see Keiji do all sorts of goofy things, like make fun of his uncle by depicting a monkey in his likeness, pissing on enemy combatants, including his uncle's men, pranking his uncle by running the bathwater too cold, or straight up cucking his uncle. His conflict with his uncle being a focal point early on due to the succession ties that bind him, and it's quite fun to see him mess around with him even though his uncle, Toshie Maeda, holds a decent amount of power. Keiji can get away with all of this though, since he himself is a beast capable of slicing heads off multiple enemies with ease. As a warrior and a general, he is feared and respected. A really nice, well-rounded character who you just can't help but love. Currently, only 30 of its chapters have an English fan translation, and narratively I wouldn't say it's the most solid of stories. It's more a series of adventures Keiji has, interspersed with battles, comedic scenes, and the occasional very touching one. That isn't to say it's not engaging and fun to read overall though. Art-wise, Tetsuo Hara reined in his art apparently due to being too busy, learning to work faster while still retaining some level of quality that his previous works had. Regardless, some panels and pages are filled with an immense amount of detail, and his expression work is as great as ever. I really love how Keiji looks. It's clear to read and still very expressive, while carrying over the same sense of realism that Hara's art is known for. Keiji would also get a Super Famicom game in 1994, multiple Pachi-slot or pachinko games post its run, radio drama broadcasts, and plenty of side manga, including a sequel named Keiji's Kabuki Adventure, illustrated by Hara and written by...
This writing Gekiga is not popular now, but it looks real and good. Yeah, it's not popular. I mean, that's maybe why, yeah. You know, whenever I search for like historical manga, right, it seems more like people using the time setting, an historical time setting, but then it's more like magic and a different type of story rather than like an historical story, right? I mean, yeah. I guess, again, Kingdom is maybe the exception, yeah. Kingdom is still popular in Japan, right? Even though it's about China, it's not about Japan.
Nobuhiko Horie, an old superstar Shonen Jump editor, mostly notable for being the editor of Fist of the North Star. While Keiji may not be very well known in the West, it seems to have a decent legacy for itself in Japan, and I implore people to give what has been translated a go.
I mean, I won't, because, as I said, I don't read anything not fully translated anymore. But I hope this gets fully translated. Yeah. Like, I'm kind of hype about it, so now I'm sad that it's not translated. It's kind of like recently, I talked about it on some other stream, I discovered that there's a Napoleon manga that looks basically like this. It's a very like JoJo / Fist of the North Star kind of Napoleon manga, and I never knew that was a thing. Yeah, Shishino Jidai, that's the one. It looks so freaking insane, and hilarious, and stupid, and there's like, probably like 700-800 chapters already, but there's only a bit translated for now, but it looks really funny. I mean, this is how Napoleon looks in this. It looks really funny, so I want to read it. Yeah, but again, only a bit of translation. I mean, that's what it is.
Since it's a lot of fun and I enjoyed reading it despite me not usually vibing with traditional Japanese settings. Like,
I mean, obviously like bande dessinée and comics are popular enough, but I think most manga are like, you know, not colored, yeah. I think myself, of all the manga I ever bought, none of them were colored. You might have like a color page or two, but you know, not the full thing or anything.
This. Hikaru Cha-Cha-Cha would be a judo manga by Kenji Minomo that lasted 61 chapters and 7 volumes, following Hikaru Nishida, a boy who aims to get good at judo following his father's death. An extremely common trope in shonen sports manga of the period, and one I've observed to be abundant in Jump's 1990 crop of newbies. The meek and small Hikaru faces much difficulty throughout this manga as he has no judo experience and the club he wishes to attend has lost most of their talent. This is an underdog story through and through of Hikaru giving judo his all despite all the odds being stacked against him, with him gradually getting better at the sport and using moves similar to his father's. The art style is really cute and I love how compact the manga is. It seems to sprinkle in lots of comedic bits, with there being lots of panels per page, but then...
I think what you're talking about is like fan coloring. There's a lot of like fan coloring, but it's not official, right? So like you mostly find it online. But yeah, like big manga like JoJo and others, there's sometimes some fan that decide to do like a colored version. But I think most of the time it's not official. Yeah. So it wouldn't get like a, you know, like a physical release because it's not official.
When big moments happen, like this judo throw in chapter 1, it's even more impactful because the art really gets to spread its legs and breathe. Hikaru Cha-Cha-Cha may not have had an extremely long run, but it did well to last as long as it did in this competitive era of Jump, and its heart, as well as its seemingly strong understanding of the sports formula at the time, I think is what let it run for as long as it did. Shuten Doji would last 16 chapters and 2 volumes by Haruto Umezawa, a
not the one I'm thinking about.
debut work of an author who we'd see in Jump for many years to come. His start would be with the sci-fi action series that follows Doji, a man who is constantly drunk which helps him hide his true appearance as a demonic alien and ultimate warrior. But when evil is afoot, he sobers up and beats down bad guys with ease. The manga initially took an episodic approach like a lot of other battle shonen manga would, seeing Doji and his companions help people out as they go from place to place, with the final few chapters then introducing some more plot-relevant villains in Thanatos, which helped give the manga a decent conclusion apparently. Shuten Doji certainly feels unique and has the building blocks to be a good manga, but maybe it was the constant references to alcohol, the more mature art style, or the odd sci-fi mythology infused setting. For whatever reason, it didn't click with the readers at the time, and it was promptly axed. Crisis Diver would last 12 chapters and 2 volumes by Shingo Todate and Ko Nimaya, being about a boy named Shotaro who is the heir to a large conglomerate who uses his vast inheritance to save others as a crisis diver. Initially, this saw him save others from things like plane crashes, fires, and even suicide attempts, but it gradually turned into a battle manga where Shotaro had to fight other bizarre individuals, showing its Fist of the North Star inspired roots. This pivot wasn't enough to save it though, and it was met with a blisteringly quick cancellation.
Bizarre adventure. Fighting game. The raping monkey. PS1?
And we're back to JoJo, where last we left off, the Stardust Crusaders had lost Avdol and were making their way to Egypt still.
Oh yeah, that's right, he was doing recap of JoJo. I guess we'll pass. I mean, as I said before, like, I don't really need a recap of JoJo. I love JoJo, but it's cool. But I still pass to the next part.
Has had something very bizarre to look forward to every single week. A few videos ago, I talked about the comedy gag manga Jungle King Ta-chan by Masaya Tokihiro. Well, in
sure, yeah. In French, especially, like we literally say bizarre, yeah. I guess it's the same in English, now that I think about it. Like, bizarre is basically weird. It's just how we say weird in French.
1990, it would enter a new era, retitling itself as Shin Jungle King Ta-chan, running for an additional 235 chapters and 20 volumes. This would essentially be the exact same manga, but the page count would be boosted, and there would be a bigger focus on battle elements, with the manga bouncing between fighting-based arcs and gag chapters now and then.
That's strange.
Presumably, there was a bigger focus on antagonist characters like poachers, and the art seemed to have a big boost from what I can tell, although sadly, unlike its first portion, you cannot read this in English. The anime for Ta-chan debuting in 1993 did largely consist of this battle-focused portion of the story though, with it helping keep the series popular for many years. Masaya Tokihiro's decision to change his manga's trajectory paid off immensely, allowing Ta-chan to be a staple of Jump for the first half of the 90s.
This again. I love how they're showing cars sponsored by freaking like Marlboro over things, so like, you know, Shonen Jump ad with a car sponsored by a cigarette company. Insane. 90s was a different time, huh? Jump.
Our next series is a bit of an odd one, lasting 17 chapters and 2 volumes by Kunihiko Akai and Hirohisa Onikubo, being a tie-in with the Formula One's McLaren team at the time. Their cars for the 1990 Formula One races having the Jump logo printed on their nose.
Okay.
GT Boy would focus on a character signing.
It's kind of small compared to the cigarette company. Comment hello Mark Alpha. Yes, Jungle King Ta-chan.
a contract with the McLaren team, with him having the ability to hear the voice of cars. It seems fairly standard, if a bit wild in its depiction of racing, but there is a sense of realism to it, being a sponsored manga, and having Ayrton Senna be a character who also appears in the manga. Jump and Japan in general had a fascination with this particular Formula 1 driver, with Akira Toriyama being a huge fan of his, and coincidentally, Ayrton Senna was a fan of Toriyama. This led to a ton of cross-promotion between
I think I've heard the name. He's one of the greatest drivers in Formula 1, I think.
Jump and McLaren, with GP Boy not being the only sponsored Formula 1 manga from Jump. Since next year in 1991, we would get a manga following Ayrton Senna himself. If you'd like to know more about this from someone on the racing and Formula 1 side of things, Law Versus has a small video on the subject, which I'd recommend if you'd like some supplemental history and opinion on this subject. Formula 1 would absolutely take over in the early 90s in Jump, with many covers from the year alone featuring their cars or even Senna on them. It's pretty bizarre from someone who has no connection to racing, but it's so clear that Jump and its fanbase were excited and in love with the sport at the time, with Toriyama even going to a race to see Senna in Hockenheim, Germany in 1990, which resulted in all sorts of fun cross-promotional images involving Goku and Dragon Ball in cars. And since we're on the subject of Toriyama, let's cover what was going on in Dragon Ball throughout 1990 now.
Okay, so I'll pass this part as well. Once again, I like Dragon Ball, but I'm actually here for a recap of that right now.
Fushigi Hunter would last 17 chapters and 2 volumes, being Yoshihiro Kuroiwa's final mag in Jump after a string of admittedly interesting failures. He would also be joined by Yukihiro Izuka on the story, this time with it following Ryuta, a wonder hunter who pursues mysteries and monsters, many of which have ties to Japanese mythology. It seemed fairly solid, mixing battle and horror elements with some great art from Kuroiwa, as well as an ecchi touch, with some scenes really pushing the envelope of what might be considered ecchi.
Tentacles, okay. Alright. The name of tentacles being very popular in manga.
With me finding some pretty hardcore tentacle shenanigans. Sadly though, it must not have stood out too much amongst the other manga of the era, and was cancelled quite quickly. 1990 would see Jump legend Yuji Tamago serialize their final manga in Jump, with Kickboxer Mamoru lasting 32 chapters and 4 volumes. This would follow Mamoru, a young boy visiting Thailand to participate in a track and field competition, only to become enamored by Muay Thai. He then witnesses his older brother being defeated by the current Muay Thai champion, King Python, and vows to defeat him.
But then it's called Kickboxer, not Muay Thai Mamoru.
Initially, it seemed things would be played fairly straight, but gradually superhuman-esque characters appeared, like this guy who has a rubber body. It would end up being cancelled midway through the story though, with Mamoru never even fighting King Python. It's a shame, as a short while later, kickboxing would pick up dramatically in Japan thanks to the K1 being established by Kazuyoshi Ishii in 1993, although a lot of the ideas present in Kickboxer Mamoru
an assistant
were fictitious and weren't that relevant to kickboxing or Muay Thai. While I think Mamoru seemed to have solid foundations in art, Yuji Tamago still seemed trapped in the past and fell into the same pit of trying to make a superpowered battle manga.
I guess it is still a bit too early for martial art manga to really be popular in Japan. By the late 90s, early 2000s, K1 is big, Pride Fighting Championship is big. There's also Punk Race and Shuto and everything. So by the late 90s and early 2000s, yeah, it's really the time to start martial art manga, I would say. The former head of Sedo Kaiken. If you read all of them, you would write the best manga ever.
This time, the number of gags had decreased, but picking a less popular sport and taking so much liberties with it, I assumed nobody was all that interested, hence its rather short run, leading Yuji Tamago to leave Jump for good. Metal Finish by Masaru Miyazaki and Nobuhisa Suroka would last 13 chapters and 2 volumes, being an ice hockey manga. Again, this would follow another young boy who was spurred on to try a sport due to their relative passing away, this time a brother. Izumi then goes to attend Seiyo University First High School Ice Hockey Club, only to find it in disrepair, with the manga focusing on rebuilding the team and having one practice match before getting cancelled. It's a shame since ice hockey is a pretty unique sport, and this took a slower team building approach that may have hurt it, along with a lack of popularity in ice hockey.
There's another, I think it's in Jump too, the author of Golden Kamuy, since he ended Golden Kamuy, he started an ice hockey manga. I think it's in Jump. And I think it's doing well. It's been going on for like 3 years or something. So that's one I'm kind of interested in because it's the author of Golden Kamuy, right? What is it called again? The author is Noda Satoru, yeah? And the manga is... Dog's Red. And it's in Young Jump, okay. Not in Weekly Shonen Jump. It's in Young Jump. And it's been going for 3 years, since 2023, so I guess it's doing kind of okay, yeah. I don't know if it's popular enough to get an anime, but, you know, I'll definitely read it because, you know, the author of Golden Kamuy, it has to be a crazy ice hockey manga, I would say.
It really feels like Jump at this time were throwing sports manga out to see if anything at all would stick, and while Metal Finish wouldn't be what they were looking for, the following week we would see one of the magazine's biggest hits of all time, and a manga that would help basketball sweep Japan as one of their new favorite sports.
Yeah, I mean, as far as what I want to read, there's quite a few. I haven't seen Slam Dunk. I haven't read Slam Dunk. I know. I need to. Actually, I think I had watched the first episode one time. That's it. Yeah. I'm very late. It's funny because I've read the two other manga by Inoue, Vagabond and Real, but not Slam Dunk. Yeah.
1990 would see the debut of one of Shonen Jump's most important and successful manga ever, as well as a manga that would bring basketball soaring into popularity for the island nation of Japan, Slam Dunk. Created by Takehiko Inoue and lasting 276 chapters and 31 volumes, Slam Dunk would follow the high school delinquent Hanamichi Sakuragi, a hopeless romantic and a bit of an airhead who's been rejected 50 times in a row, now setting his sights on Haruko Akagi, and to win her over, Sakuragi decides to join the school's basketball team. Initially, Slam Dunk feels like much more of a gag manga than anything else. It has a lot of text, jokes, and while Inoue flexes with his art here and there with realistic facial expressions, it's nowhere near what he'd later be known.
Yeah, I mean, if you show me this, I would never think it's Inoue. I would think it's a different artist.
Known for. In fact, silly gag expressions make up the majority of the manga early on. The basketball elements slowly worm their way in though, as we're introduced to its extended cast like Takenori Akagi, the captain of Shohoku basketball team, and Kaide Rukawa, a cool and collected player who attracts all the girls, lighting a fire under Sakuragi to improve and to beat him in order to impress his love interest. There's a lot of practicing, Sakuragi making dumb jokes and goofing off, but gradually something begins to change. More characters join the team, the art gets better, punchier and more detailed, and with it the basketball gets more competent and more games happen. Sakuragi starts to get better, and instead of pursuing the sport out of a desire to appeal to his crush, he begins to do so for the love of improving and for enjoying the game of basketball. Slam Dunk really takes its time to get there, but steadily it bridges the gap between a goofy delinquent comedy into becoming a sports manga, which would go on to redefine the genre, with some arguing that it's still the very best even to this day. Slam Dunk may not be my favorite manga ever, and I think its start is a bit tumultuous, but I feel like I get it. The journey you go on with Sakuragi and Shohoku is infectious. All the training and the gradual amping up of its serious.
Slam Dunk is said to be the best sports manga ever. People on my age didn't read it. I can't believe it was such popular. I think in the West, most people would say Hajime no Ippo, which I haven't read either. In the West, people really like Hajime no Ippo, yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's my favorite sports manga. I don't actually know. Yeah, I don't have an answer top of my head. I was thinking like martial arts, you know, like Holyland or Baiki, but I don't think it counts. It's not really sports, right? Not official, at least, yeah.
Gets you invested. It gets better and better, just like the characters are getting better and better at the game they play. Tension rises and each game gets more intense, more impactful and more important. Sakuragi's first pass at the hoop is one big joke, and then later on when the ball is in his hands and he's about to do a dunk, your heart stops. It also ends up looking absolutely insane, and I have no idea how Inoue managed to go from his early art to later slam dunk in the span of a few years. It's a truly impressive artistic development and showcases how regular drawing through making manga can elevate what you make tremendously, as well as likely burn you out. On every level, it's truly amazing. The expression work, action shots of balls being dunked, spread showing off the entire teams, every single piece of art in the later volumes is a masterpiece. Slam Dunk on a meta level, through its improvements in art, story structure, and narrative, all follow the core tenets of shonen manga, an improving trajectory full of passion, getting better and better, higher and higher, until you attain victory. It's quintessentially one of the most shonen jump manga to ever exist, and if you haven't read it, please do bear with the initial volumes and try your best to get invested in Sakuragi's journey, because the end will leave you breathless. Slam Dunk's impact was greatly felt on the magazine and in Japan generally. Its success alongside Dragon Ball took the magazine to its highest heights, with it peaking towards the end of the manga and falling off considerably after Slam Dunk ended. Slam Dunk would serve to...
For your age, sport manga, Kuroko no Basket and IQ, which girls used to jerk. Okay. Actually, yeah, when I started getting into anime, Kuroko no Basket was... I started getting into the early 2010, and Kuroko no Basket was probably my first favorite sport anime. I actually also remember, for like a little story, back in 2015, the final season of Kuroko no Basket was airing basically, and I was enjoying it, and this is about the time that I discovered reaction video, and it's about the time that people started doing reaction video, 2015, and the first time I searched for an anime reaction was Kuroko no Basket, and this is how I discovered that people were doing anime reaction, and that was like 11 years ago now, and this is when I started watching anime reaction because of Kuroko no Basket. That was a long time ago.
Influenced countless sports manga to come, as well as manga in general, with even the recent Dandadan having a reference to it, where Okurun and Gigi sing its theme songs and dance.
About the Gintama Slam Dunk jokes. Okay.
And on that subject, Slam Dunk would get an anime in 1993, spanning 101 episodes.
It's not complete though, right? Incredibly popular in China, and apparently railroad crossing in Kanagawa Prefecture are being used by fans on pilgrimage of the anime, causing problems for local residents. Wait, what's the connection between Slam Dunk and railroads? Interesting.
Further reinforcing its popularity, several films would also be released in the 90s too, with the recent first Slam Dunk coming out in 2022 to great fanfare and proving that its legacy is still strong to this day. Games, side manga, and merch of all kinds has been made for Slam Dunk, and it's also one of Jump's best-selling manga still to this day, and frequently still sells a lot. Perhaps most importantly though, it's widely stated that Slam Dunk is in large part responsible for popularizing basketball in Japan. I'm not sure exactly how accurate this is, though Inoue has stated that he received a lot of letters while creating Slam Dunk which mentioned that his manga was responsible for inspiring them to pick up the sport. He also seems to be pretty heavily connected to basketball in Japan through various things like basketball scholarships. I think it's truly remarkable.
Again, the guy is really into basketball. Even after this, in the 2000s, he started the manga Real, which is about disabled wheelchair basketball, and that's the one that I've read, even though it's still not finished, I think. And we see that one is very different. It is about basketball, but I think it's more about, people who are disabled but still try to live their life. So it's more of like a personal manga, I would say. But yeah, he's been doing real at the same time as he was writing Vagabond, long after Slam Dunk was finished. So he just really loves basketball. Yeah.
That a single story can have such a huge effect on not only the perception of a sport in a country, but also the lives of so many people. It's remembered as one of Shonen Jump's greatest manga for a very good reason. The one caveat with Slam Dunk though is sadly it's not available digitally at all in any official capacity. There was an old Raijin Comics release initially, although it didn't get very far in, but thankfully a full physical English release does exist from Viz Media that sometimes has been a bit hard to come across, although recently it looks like it's had enough reprints that it won't be too much of a pain to collect if you'd like to have all of Slam Dunk for yourself in English physically.
Okay, I need to read it. Kamakura is so
Following Slam
station.
Dunk, we would then get another decently well-known manga of the early 90s in Shinyuki, lasting 64 chapters and 6 volumes by Gatoroman. This would be a parody of Journey to the West, and as such, the name Son Goku was off the table due to Goku being an established name already, so instead we follow Yamada Taro, a tyrannical being that terrorizes the land who quickly gets humbled by the wandering monk Genjo who takes him on a journey. This is a pretty crude gag manga that sees Taro and Genjo at odds the whole time. There's a lot of poop jokes and Jump manga are parodied here and there. It was relatively popular in some sense, with Taro even appearing in Jump Star's Victory Versus in 2014 and him being on the cover of Shonen Jump with one Arnold Schwarzenegger in...
Okay, what is Arnold Schwarzenegger doing in Shonen Jump? What?
1991, with Jump having their own promotional run with him in the future, and with Arnold being a judge for a comedy manga competition with the serialization of Mon 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 in 1992. Shinyuki though would be cancelled for apparently disturbing Jump's audience too much. From the short amount that's been translated and my exposure to Gatoroman's work, I can see why. It's grotesque, not pleasant to look at, and the humor is very aggressive and lowbrow. When I was younger, I'd see pictures of Shinyuki and be disgusted, although now I've got to admit I kind of vibe with this creepy looking monkey guy, and Shinyuki can be a bit funny in its own way. Shinyuki would also receive a short 3-episode OVA in 2009, which was apparently made very cheaply, and a full live-action film also exists that came out in 2016. Despite having a bizarre reputation, it's left its mark on the magazine and its readers in some very unique ways, and it stands out a lot to me as being the only new gag manga of this year. Tenyan, the story of Minakata Kumagusu, would last 12 chapters and 1 volume by Daimura Kishi, being a biographical account of Minakata Kumagusu, a man who ventured outside of Japan in 1886 to travel the world and educate himself on what it had to offer. Kumagusu would spend time in many countries, with the US and UK being the prime two, where he'd study things like nature, folklore and religion extensively, coming back to Japan at the
manga Taro, because it's just manga Taro, but it shows Gataro Man.
turn of the century to share the wealth of his knowledge and live out the rest of his days. He's a storied figure in Japanese history and one I had no knowledge about prior to researching for this video. It's also pretty interesting to me that Jump would serialize something so educational like this, although it was being done by the author of Dinosaur's Journey, which lasted a similar length, so perhaps both weren't cancelled but rather were meant to act as shorter educational works, with Jump just trying out something new. Sadly, I can't find too much info or even pages for this one aside from its covers and its first color page, with it being relatively obscure compared to most of the other manga that feature in this video.
Okay. Yu Yu Hakusho.
Hey, my name's Yusuke, and I guess you could say I was just a normal kind of guy. I did normal stuff like going to school, spending quality time with my mom, and hanging out with friends. Okay, so maybe I wasn't so normal. But after the accident, that's when things really started getting weird. Stupid weird.
My man got hit by a car, but he didn't get isekai'd. It was too early to get isekai'd.
All of a sudden I started seeing
Part 4 looks like Yu Yu Hakusho.
And this Koenma guy guy shows up and tells me I've got special new powers, and that I've got to be some kind of spirit detective so I can save the world. Whoa, that's a lot to lay on a guy if you ask me. Maybe school wasn't so bad after all. Yu Yu Hakusho coming soon from Funimation on VHS and DVD.
I like the classic ads.
The very end of 1990 would then give us one last big hit to the magazine, and like Slam Dunk, one of the most popular manga from Jump's lineup period, in Yu Yu Hakusho. Created by Yoshihiro Togashi and lasting 176 chapters and 19 volumes, Yu Yu Hakusho would follow Yusuke Urameshi, a delinquent who has just died following a car accident where he jumped in the way to save a child's life. Yusuke is then met with Botan, a guide to the underworld, who reveals that Yusuke dying due to saving that child's life was an unexpected development, so he is granted an opportunity to come back to life. I really dig early Yu Yu Hakusho, it's really emotional, and I don't think it gets enough praise. The first chapter introduces us to Yusuke's friends, teachers, and mother, and we get to see their reactions to his death, which is a great opportunity to really get a good grasp on Yusuke as well as these other characters. It's an event full of vulnerability, showcasing a rowdy character in a different light than you might expect, with the scenes involving Yusuke's mother and principal being highlights for me. There's something in his portrayal of these emotive adults who haven't given up on Yusuke despite his delinquent proclivities that's really wholesome. And wholesome is a word that's synonymous with early Yu Yu Hakusho. I was surprised when reading to find the anime cut a noticeable portion of its first arc, which focuses on Yusuke being a literal spirit detective, helping others while he himself is dead. Stories like Shota losing his dog and best friend Jiro are really touching. Yusuke wanting to help him heal from the grief he's experiencing as a young child by showing that Jiro had a content and fulfilling life is exceptionally sweet, and I remember it making me bawl my eyes out while reading, as I hadn't long seen our very old family cat pass away myself. Another story sees Yusuke date a ghost girl who had died while waiting for her boyfriend, Yusuke allowing her to pass on by helping her fulfill her last wishes by just having a good time with her.
I like stories like this.
Initially...
There's a bunch of manga with this kind of concept of, people who can't move on and they need to do something to move on, right? There's one I really like. I forget what it's called. Maybe it's Tsurebito. Let me try to see if I can find it. But I really like this concept, of, trying to help people pass on by helping them with like one last thing that they couldn't do. Is it this one? Yeah, Tsurebito. It's by the artist Yoshitani Akito. I think people know him more for maybe lewd stuff, and also he does a lot of like drawing on YouTube. I really like his stuff. He's the author of Hitman, Blue Drop, Balance Policy, School Ningyo, that's very catchy. Chikuno Kago, which I like too. He does a lot of like lewd manga, I will say. He's really good as a lewd artist. But Tsurebito is like one of his serious manga, and it's about like some kind of like escort of purgatory where people pass on, by kind of dealing with their lingering feelings, maybe. Where people from overseas see that when they heard an unfamiliar term like Yu Yu Hakusho. I don't know. I really don't know. By the time I grew up, Yu Yu Hakusho was already like an old classic, right? So, yeah. It feels weird in Japanese too. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's so much of a classic that people don't think about it, right? And like a lot of the manga from back then have simple name, like Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho. But then today, you go to like for example, like today I was watching an anime called this. Like the name of anime today is stuff like this, right? Yusha Ken Ishosu, Shobatsu Yusha 9004 Tai Kemu Kiroku. Who's gonna remember that, right? But then you go back to the 90s, it's like Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball, One Piece, Bleach, Naruto. Simple. And then you have this Yusha Ken Ishoshu, Shobatsu Yusha. It's like normal people are not gonna remember all that, so people will remember only the English name, which is sometimes to be a Yido, right? Yeah. I think names have gotten too crazy because of light novels. I think people say it all the time, but They have gotten too crazy, I would say. Translated, white paper playing with ghosts. I never actually thought what Yu Yu Hakusho translated to, yeah. Interesting.
Is a meditation on what it means to die and what it means to live. What do we leave behind? How does it affect our loved ones? And what does a life well lived mean? It tackles this with an exceptional warmth, showing us how much of a kind-hearted person Yusuke is, while also helping to unlock his inner good guy. The opening arcs with Keiko and Kuwabara are also big highlights, but I really wanted to mention and show some love to these early short stories in the manga, since I fear people may have never seen them if they've only watched the anime. The beginning of Yu Yu Hakusho following this would see Yusuke revive due to all the good deeds he's done, utilizing his connections to Kuwabara and Keiko to help in the process, two characters who get established really well in this short amount of time. The scene where he wakes up is really touching too. It's tender and the artwork does all the talking, and you can feel how elated Yusuke and Keiko are to just be tangible together again. Tagashi's art really elevates these scenes, with it being a mix of a more cute romantic art style coming from Cupid, his previous series in Jump, but it blends in these harsher, scratchier, and often sillier elements too. While it could be seen as rough from time to time, I feel like he can nail emotion really well thanks to his good sense of page layout, expression work, and screen tone usage. Due to how he uses screen tones and the bigger, more detailed eyes he draws, it actually reminds me of shoujo manga, especially.
I was gonna say. I mean, look at that girl on the top left. This looks like a panel out of a classic shoujo, like, totally.
Especially in more emotional scenes involving Keiko, which I think is a very neat blending of demographic styles. With Yusuke now alive, the story could very well end here, but in spending so much time as a spirit, it seems we found out that he has some sort of natural skill in handling the supernatural, which we'll talk more about next time when Yusuke becomes an underworld detective working for Koenma, and the battle shonen elements of the series will get fully introduced. Yu Yu Hakusho would enjoy a modestly long run, and though it didn't last quite as long as some of Jump's other top series, its impact and popularity is undisputed, with it being one.
I mean, it would have actually lasted longer, right? From what I understand, it was cancelled. Well, cancelled. We see Yoshihiro Togashi, I think everybody knows he has some big health issues with his back, and I think I had read that's why I've only seen the anime, but the final arc is very rushed to finish. And that's because he was, not very well, and so he wanted to end the manga. Otherwise, he could have continued for a long time, and maybe Hunter x Hunter would have never happened. It's possible.
It's the best-selling manga of all time, and one people look back to fondly to this day. It would receive a 112-episode anime in 1992, running all the way into 1995, with numerous short OVAs and films filling out the decade as well. Outside of anime, it has a live-action TV drama which premiered in December of 2023,
really?
A stage play adaptation, and around 25 games, the earliest of which being in 1993 for the Game Boy, with some newer mobile games being released in the last few years. Yu Yu Hakusho is a very special manga for many.
I guess, yeah. It could be considered government formal, yeah.
Battle shonen that competed alongside Dragon Ball when it was at its most popular, and it is deservingly a pillar of 90s Jump, as well as an important late addition to Jump's golden age. And now that we've talked about every new addition to the magazine, let's review what was in the magazine at the start and end of the year to see how Jump has changed. Starting out in 1990, we have the classics: Dragon Ball, City Hunter, Saint Seiya, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, now deep in the Stardust Crusaders portion of the story, and other classics like Sakigake Otokojuku, Roku Danashi Blues, and Dragon Quest Dai filled the magazine out with even more battle shonen manga. Video Girl Ai and Magical Talo Talo would bring hints of romance, slice of life, and ecchi to the magazine, while Yamashito Taro, Kami-sama wa Southpaw, and the newly serialized Ace would see it sprinkled with sports. Gag manga was still ever present with Kochikame, as well as Mororo Inisan, Boku wa Shitataka-kun, and Jungle King Ta-chan being present. Tobikiri would be another boxing manga that would have a decent run throughout the year, as well as Tende Showaru Cupid, a romantic comedy. The Green Eyes and AT Lady would be the only real duds currently in the magazine at this time, and to be fair, they were still pretty interesting. Jump's roster is pretty packed here, But as usual, manga end, get cancelled, and new ones take their place consistently, so what changes did 1990 bring? 80 Lady, The Green Eyes, as well as Tobikiri, Kamiwa Southpaw, and Yamashita Taro would end. All three of the magazine's big sports series, aside from Rokudenashi Blues and Ace, would disappear in a flash, making it more obvious why 1990 had so many new sports serializations.
Yeah, they need some new one.
Taka-kun would end due to other health reasons, and Saint Seiya would end at the very end of 1990, having a long and fruitful run. 10 Day Showaru Cupid would also end, giving us 8 slots to fill, and Togashi would waste no time, giving us the legendary Yu Yu Hakusho in place of Cupid. Slam Dunk would be another mega hit of the year and help alleviate the lack of sports titles in the magazine. Hana no Keiji would be a third hit of the year, adding a historical spice to the magazine, which it was somewhat lacking. And then we have Chinyuki, a divisive gag manga that would last the year and fill in as a new comedy manga. And then we have A Metal Finish, Kickboxer Mamoru, Hikaru Cha-Cha-Cha, which would all be brand new sports series, reaching various levels of success, but filling the magazine with a diverse range of sports. Boxing, kickboxing, judo, ice hockey, baseball, and basketball were all present at this time, which I think is pretty neat. And to cap everything off, we have the biographical manga, Tenyan. Slam Dunk, Yu Yu Hakusho, and Keiji are all great additions, and I think alleviate the loss of Saint Seiya. They up the quality and notoriety of the magazine by quite a bit. I do feel as though the variation has been sacrificed though, in favour of adding more sports series, but I can't complain too much as we do have some weirdness.
When I guess they're trying to find which one is gonna last, I'm sure they add so many sports series because they know most won't last.
With Chinyuki and Tenyan, Jump by the end of 1990 was in a stronger place again, with burgeoning newcomers full of potential. Its long-running manga like Dragon Ball were doing really well, and manga like Dragon Quest, Dai, and JoJo saw immense growth and surges of popularity. We definitely have a few duds on board, but overall it's very clear to see why the 1990s are such a celebrated decade for the magazine, and we are only at the very beginning.
I love the image of Goku holding, like a sponsor of a cigarette company. It's crazy.
And that's Weekly Shonen Jump in 90.
Okay, well, the very interesting 1990. One manga here that I really want to read. Well, actually two, I guess. Hana no Keiji, if one day it gets fully translated. And then Slam Dunk. I mean, I always knew that I need to read Slam Dunk, since I love Inoue's work. You know. I guess maybe it's that I'm still mad that he hasn't finished Vagabond, right? But I need to read Slam Dunk. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's go into 1991 now.
Welcome back to the 90s. Last we left off, Shonen Jump had entered the new decade in a major way, giving us huge classics like Yu Yu Hakusho and Slam Dunk. 1991...
I guess we can pass the intro and go... Oh, he talks about JoJo, so we can go over here.
Following on from his wrestling gag manga The Momotaro in 1991, we would see Makoto Niwana return with the Let's Play Soccer Takeda the Liberio, lasting 84 chapters and 9 volumes. This manga would see Danmaru Takeda, a first-year high schooler, transfer to Akebono High School in search of a football club, since he's insanely passionate about the sport. Like Niwana's past work, it would combine sports elements with a lot of gags, which I think is pretty apparent based on Takeda's egg-shaped design. As well as this, it would take on the Shonen Sports legacy of using special superpowered moves like Takeda's Bazooka Channel. So unlike something more grounded, it leaned fully into being a silly sports series, having all sorts of quirky characters appear, like a goalie who uses Mongolian chops to defend from the ball, and even Takeda's own father being an antagonist. While Takeda wouldn't be the most well-known series ever, it would still have its fans who remember these special moves and silly jokes to this day. And in 2002, Niwana would publish Takeda the Liberio 2002 World Flight Edition to celebrate the World Cup that year, which would be hosted between Korea and Japan. This sees the older Takeda, who's been lost in Africa playing football with the wildlife there, and then returning to the country to...
The goalie is an elephant. What? If the elephant just turns sideways, it can cover the full goal.
Participate in the World Cup. Welcome, travelers, to the Outer Zone. Today, I will be your stalker and help guide you through this mysterious place, fraught with danger and horrors beyond mortal comprehension. Thankfully, we also have a handy guidebook to help us navigate the Outer Zone, which is 123 chapters long and 15 volumes by an experienced zone explorer named Shin Matsuhara. Originally, they published Outer Zone for a volume in the middle of 1991 within Weekly Shonen Jump, but it would resume and become a permanent series due to an unexpected wave of popularity, which would see it housed within the magazine for a few years to come. Outer Zone is a horror anthology series taking cues from other popular sci-fi or horror anthology TV shows like The Twilight Zone or Outer Limits, with it also most likely being influenced by the new and popular Yo ni mo Kimi o na Monogatari, the strangest story in the world, a similar Japanese TV show that debuted in 1990. This anthology approach to the story was fairly popular around the world at the time. Comics weren't a stranger to it either, with stuff like Tales from the Crypt originating as a comic from the 1950s.
What's the matter with you? Want to keep that 90-pound corpse for the rest of your death? Keep pumping.
I think Tales from the Crypt is good to bring up as an example too, as its comic as well as later TV and film adaptations would have a narrator or host in the Crypt Keeper, and keeping that legacy alive, the Outer Zone would have one too, Misery. Misery would be a beautiful and
I love the design.
enigmatic host. Not much is ever revealed about her other than that she has extensive knowledge of the Outer Zone, abilities or access to items that connect her to the Outer Zone, and a charming but also slightly scheming nature. You'll see her in pretty much every single chapter, usually at the beginning and end of stories, to bookend them and to pinpoint the theme or moral each tale is trying to convey. She's also known as a stalker or...
Oh, it's good. Okay. I'm interested. I'm always interested about like urban legend and stuff like that. Let's look this up. Tale of the Unusual, 1990 horror 3 season. Okay. Someone is asking if there's English subtitle. Oh, okay. I am blocked from Reddit because of VPN. Oh no. Can I find the actual one on IMDb? Tale of the Bizarre. This one. Okay. Long running horror series from Japan. Many stories and you just need to watch a good one. Okay. How do I know which one is good? Yeah, I don't know if I'll find subtitles for this though. I'd be surprised though. But the concept is kind of cool. Yeah.
Her full name is often Misery Stalker, with her sometimes saying within the manga that she'll be your stalker as opposed to a guide. While this sounds creepy and in line with the work, it actually comes from Andrei Tarkovsky's 1979 film Stalker and adaptation of the novel Roadside Picnic. You might also know this as the book and film that inspired the game series Stalker. Mitsuhara basically took the idea of the zone from this story, complete with calling those who navigate it as stalkers, while applying this horror anthology element to it as well. I bring all of...
Oh, that's a cool concept. Actually, now I'm interested in this manga. Yeah. Like if you've ever watched the movie or played the game, the concept of the zone and the art of the zone and the stalkers is so interesting.
This up because I find it genuinely fascinating, and reading Mitsuhara's notes in the volumes where he gushes over his influences in film was super enjoyable to me as a fan of cinema. It also makes Outer Zone this weird work seeped in Western sensibilities. It's really unlike anything else in Jump and is a fun merger of cultures. These stories themselves vary in quality, and I'm sure a lot of them are heavily influenced by individual plots from the Twilight Zone or other anthologies or movies Mitsuhara likes. The first volume, for example, sees stories about an overbearing mother who believes her son is Satan. There's a story about a cursed shrunken head and someone using it to win big at a casino, and there's also one about a clown machine that offers cursed fortunes. One of the most memorable stories for me might be the one where this dad goes to put down the family dog. He then crashes his car and wakes up only to find that he's in a new reality where dog-like aliens have landed and begin persecuting humanity over the treatment of animals. Conceptually, there's a lot of fun and weird stuff here. Some stories will focus on horror elements, some on sci-fi. Misery might be a character now and then rather than just a host, and as it goes on, some stories get expanded on, like the Magic Doll storyline. This sees a police officer team up with a girl whose soul has been transported into the body of a small children's doll. It, like the rest of the Outer Zone, is very weird, but has this endearing quality to it, with Mitsuhara mentioning he created it to add levity to the series, and it was so well received it went on to have 8 whole parts throughout Outer Zone's run. Another interesting tidbit I found is that a chapter later on tackles the subject of Japan's harmful comic riots, a movement that had been brewing for years but came to a head in 1990 when Asahi Shimbun declared that comic books have a negative impact on children. This also involved singling out Shonen Jump for its increasingly violent works aimed at children. Jump was no stranger to controversies like this though, going back to its inception with the Harenshi Gakuen controversy that saw some parts of the public and the PTAs being against their content from the very beginning. It also reminds me of how comics came under threat in the 50s when the Comics Code Authority was formed, which aimed to censor comics and limited what they could depict. If any manga could tackle a subject like this, something as Western influenced and influenced by the very things the Comic Code Authority set out to ban initially, being grittier horror comics, it makes Outer Zone the perfect manga to talk about all of this. Even though Outer Zone lacks any popularity in the West, we have a considerable portion translated, a bit over 50 chapters. This is a series that's pretty unique and I think historically significant, so I heavily recommend giving it a look. It's also...
As always, such a shame. Like, I'm really interested, but if it's not fully translated, I don't want to read it. That's what I always say, right? Because if I love it, but then I can't read the rest of it, it will feel very annoying. And these days I really enjoy finishing stories, so... yeah, it sounds great, something I would really enjoy, but I guess I won't read it until maybe one day it's translated.
Something I'd like to revisit at some point, as it's a work that's tied in with so many other things I'm interested in. Misery is also just a super cool character and I'd like to gush over her even more. While Outer Zone is somewhat a relic of the past, it did receive a sequel manga in 2011 that ran for a few more volumes called Outer Zone Revisited. It also received a novel, some audio readings, and a small stage play, which immediately intrigued me upon hearing about it. Stage play adaptations are fairly common amongst manga, but this was one for a relatively successful Shonen Jump manga from the 90s. Yet it was set to take place in 2020. Unfortunately, COVID happened. And yet, despite the pandemic and numerous cast members quitting the production, it ended up being held in 2023, which I know about because the actress for Misery, Kurara Shimagaki, has an extensive blog post about her thoughts behind the production, its postponement, and eventual completion. The play was also a mix of theatrical acting and digital elements, including comic parts by Matsuhira himself, who was involved. I got the sense from reading Kurara's article that she really loves Outer Zone, and it just made me happy, knowing that all these older manga are still remembered and loved to such an extent over 3 decades after its release. Kurara's article will be in the description if you'd like to read it, and again I heavily recommend you take a trip to Shonen Jump's Outer Zone sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Pennant Race Yamada Taichi no Kiseki would be yet another new sports manga of the year, being created by Koji Koseki, who we covered all the way back in 1986 with Yamashita Taro, and similarly this would be another long-running baseball manga in the same style. It would last 126 chapters and 14 volumes, following Yamada Taichi, the main character who loves baseball but isn't very good at it initially. Some differences between this and the prior Yamashita Taro are the main character having a twin brother who is on the same team as him and is a high school prodigy, and also real baseball teams being represented within the manga. I might be mistaken, but from what I can tell, a lot of focus was put into Taichi getting better at baseball and being tutored by the team, becoming a prodigy by the end despite his short stature and immature appearance. Yamada Taichi, like Yamashita Taro, captured the heart of its certain Japanese readers, perhaps due to it being an underdog story, or because it featured a more statistical and methodical approach to sports, which a lot of other sports series didn't approach. Time Walker Ray by Yuki Hidaka would last 23 chapters and 4 volumes, and would follow Setsuna Ray, a boy with the ability to time travel which he uses to bring back works of art from the past to sell. But behind the scenes of his already shady business, he would also offer a service to go back in time and change the past of those who pay him. Initially, this would be very episodic.
That's like the worst thing to do. That's like the worst thing to do. My man, like, I guess it's before Steins Gate, but yeah, I was gonna say he didn't watch Steins Gate. What a terrible idea.
Seeing Rei get approached by someone who has a major regret wanting to change things, like this old woman in one chapter who wishes she ended up marrying someone back in her younger years. Rei then goes back in time and ensures the two get together properly. I think there's a lot of appeal here with Rei potentially going to all sorts of different time periods, and people seem to really like the very human short stories it told. But about a volume or so in, the Ryu Jinju arc begins, which takes the rest of the series and sees Time Walker Rei become a battle manga, like a lot of other cancelled manga of the period. It's a shame since the original concept sounds so interesting, and after its cancellation, Yuki Hidaka would leave Jump and go on to do a lot of licensed manga for things like the Atelier franchise, as well as Super Robot Wars.
Okay.
Don Vulcan by returning veteran Ryuji Tsujihara would last 11 chapters in 2 volumes, being a baseball manga at a time when the magazine was oversaturated with sports. It's a shame too, since the artwork and character designs really pop out to me. Unlike Pennant Race, it looks to focus on adult baseball, with its main character, Todoroki, also known as Don Vulcan, aiming to revolutionize Japanese baseball. Based on little tidbits I've read, Todoroki grew up in Dominica and returned to Japan, giving him an interesting heritage, but that wouldn't be enough to get readers interested, leading it to be one of the quickest cancellations Jump's ever seen.
What is this? Crazy head.
In my last history video, we covered the manga GP Boy, as well as McLaren, the Formula One racing team who partnered with Shonen Jump. This partnership would continue to blossom into 1991, leading to a second sponsored Formula One manga with F no Senko Aten Senna no Chosen by Hirohisa Onikubo, Katsuhiro Nagasawa, and Koyu Nishimura, lasting 16 chapters and 2 volumes. This would be a more biographical manga than GP Boy, focusing on Senna's career and real events and people that popped up throughout it, and his rise in becoming a top Formula One racer. The art style is very reflective of this, being some of the most realistic art Jump's ever seen.
It really doesn't look like a Jump manga, yeah.
If you'd like to know more about the collaboration between Jump and Formula One and some of its ties to Akira Toriyama, who was a huge fan of McLaren, Senna, and Formula One racing, I highly recommend you check out my last discussion about it in the 1990 history video. And since we're on the topic of Toriyama, we might as well check out Dragon Ball, as well as the most important event that occurred in 1990.
Okay, I guess we can pass the Dragon Ball part.
Video.
What happens next? Wait a sec.
This year would also see the return of Shonen Jump video games with Famicom Jump 2 Saikyo no Shichinen. This would be the sequel to the game we covered in the 1989 video, and it would also be for the NES or the Famicom. A much shift in focus. Instead of having tons and tons of Jump references, it would only focus on 7 of the magazine's major series at the time, letting you control the protagonists from each. Goku from Dragon Ball, Tarutaru from Magical Tarutaru, Maida Tyson from Rokudenashi Blues, Jotaro Kujo from JoJo, Ta-chan from Ta-chan, and Momotaro Ken from Otokojuku, as well as Ryotsu Kenkichi from Kochikame. Characters and enemies designed by the mangaka of each series would also be present, and it seems to be a more focused work, refining its RPG aspects, sprite work, and general ideas from the first. It also has a quirky but fun combat system, which I found a bunch of praise for. If you'd like a deep dive into the game, I've linked a wiki article going through it critically, as well as a long video which I used some footage for, which might give you a decent sense of what it might be like to play. Ten Yoritakaku Higher Than Heaven was
An
a
Austin
horse
manga?
racing manga that lasted 19 chapters and 2 volumes by Yuko Asami.
Maybe too ahead of his time, I mean. Yeah, maybe he would do well today.
This would follow a young jockey named Yuki who had previously lost their horse after an injury forced it to retire. Quitting the sport, Yuki lives on listlessly until meeting a new horse named Helios, who he's instantly enamored with. The two of them then form a bond and begin attending horse riding competitions with different clubs, rivals, and adventures popping up throughout its short run. Apparently, Yuko Asami really wanted to depict the special kinds of relationships that can develop between humans and animals with this manga, but struggled to balance all the elements, leading to it not lasting very long. They would, however, return in the future with a work featuring humans and animals that would reach a greater level of success, but we'll save that story for another day.
I don't know which one it is.
Tengai-kun's Brilliant Troubles by Sho Makura would last 16 chapters and 2 volumes, being about the titular Tengai-kun, a high schooler who wants to be seen as a hard-boiled and dependable person, but as the title
The guy who's 35-year-old.
he is troubled. Tengai, due to his strong constitution, secretes
A nice cooler. He looks 35.
pheromones that would attract women to him, causing him much distress in his daily life, as he doesn't seem all that interested in romance. This would be the basis for a romantic gag manga where Tengai-kun attempts to help others while all these girls fall in love with him and get in his way. There's likely a mix of romance, action, and gag elements, and I really like how the author draws their characters. The female characters especially have a fun cuteness and roundness to them. Tennen Shoku Danji Bure would last 13 chapters and 2 volumes by Kazuo Takahashi, which was actually creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! Kazuki Takahashi under a pen name, with this being his first Shonen Jump manga. Bure would be the titular character and a thief, selling stolen goods and being a no-good hitman with his naturally muscular body. One day he falls in love with a sister at a church, and to save face and to save the church, which needs funding, he declares himself a pro wrestler. Thus, a wrestling comedy would begin, seeing Bure bluff his way through bouts and gradually fall in love with the sport. To me, it looks quite a bit different from the Yu-Gi-Oh! I know and love, although there's glimpses of Takahashi's early Yu-Gi-Oh! Style here, especially in the villains. It's a shame that Bure has no translation, especially since Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an overwhelmingly popular franchise both in Japan and overseas. The manga might be the most neglected compared to the card game and anime though. Hopefully one day someone can translate this, or I will start an initiative to, since I love Takahashi's work and would love to read what he made before one of my favorite series. Arabian Story Lamp Lamp by Ken Obata, a pen name of Takeshi Obata of Death Note art fame, as well as Susumu Zendo on the story, will last 23 chapters and 3 volumes. This would be a fairly run-of-the-mill battle manga with an interesting setting, being a Middle Eastern fantasy-inspired one where Jinn have taken over the world, enslaving humanity. To break free of the Jinn's chains and to save his sister, Toto decides to break free the gentle genie Rampo in order to help him, giving him a fighting chance against his demonic overlords. It's interesting to see Obata do art for a pure battle shonen series. In a way, I can see this as a proto-Ral grad, with Rampo and Ral being similar-ish characters. Both are girl-obsessed, love eating, and start the series sealed,
But you can tell on the right, the Death Note art style is more coming into view, while the one on the left, yeah, I wouldn't recognize it.
artistically, it lacks the definition of his later style and is instead full of impact. There's a lot of good action shots and punches, and a more cartoonish aesthetic that I really dig. Rampo has a very fun and goofy design.
It looks a bit too generic to me.
And in some of the art I found, it shows him making some great expressions. I really love his design when he's trapped in his lamp as well. It sounded like it wasn't very popular due to it being a bit too formulaic, especially in its fights, which were always solved by hitting harder than the enemy. If this sounds interesting at all, about half has been translated into English. These scans aren't great though, but will give you a sense of what it's all about.
Okay. I mean, always interesting to see some of the early time of big hotels.
To finish off the year, let's quickly run over some...
Oh, so just more recap of Yu Yu Hakusho. Man, after the video is becoming recap of JoJo, Dragon Ball, Yu Yu Hakusho. I mean, I'm sure some people like it. Oh yeah, there's a Western talk, but I guess we got the gist of it. Yeah, I shouldn't complain. You know, I'm sure some people like it, but I'm more here for
Even
like
with the
hearing about the one I don't know. And, you know, if you tell me about Dragon Ball, JoJo, or Yu Yu Hakusho, I already know about it. You know, and I don't really want a recap, which again is fine. It's fine. Okay, well, 91 definitely doesn't seem that strong. 1980 was really strong in terms of like new stuff. 91, yeah, seems like it struggled a bit. I guess the biggest thing was Arthur Zone, even though it's not known in the West. I mean, I'd never heard about it before, but it ran for like a lot of volume. And it's the kind of thing I'm really interested in. But at the same time, if it's only partially translated, even if it's episodic, I don't know, it would probably leave a bad taste, you know, not to finish it. Okay, well, that was 90 and 91. Two great videos. As always, I enjoyed it. We've learned about more stuff. I think again, yeah, the big takeaway for me today is this one, Anano Keiji. Another one that again, I'll have to wait, that maybe one day it will be fully translated. Slam Dunk, I need to read. And maybe Atter Zone, maybe one day. I mean, you never know, right? Those are the couple that I'm really interested in. And some of the others, obviously, I'm like mildly interested in. But those were the three standout for me this time around. But again, I guess without realizing, I already had this one on my list of plan to read. Basically, when I joined this site, my anime list, like 10 years ago, I spent a lot of time on the anime and manga side of the site, adding a lot of stuff to my plan to read that looked interesting. But I guess I forgot all about it because that was like 10 years ago. It's been a long time. But yeah, good stuff. Again, we'll continue next week. Maybe we'll do a lot of videos in one go. Maybe we'll do another short stream like this, we'll see. But that will be it for today. As always, thank you guys for coming. So, Mark Elf, hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, comment. Tomorrow I'm doing a stream where we're gonna watch videos about 2chan and some of the things that happen over there. And yeah, like, subscribe, comment. I'll see you guys next time. See you.